So former Fox News commentator, among other things, Pete Hegseth, who is now Trump's defense secretary, has recently been facing a number of controversies. One being cheating on his spouses, sexual assault and grape, and alleged drinking problems at work while at Fox and Friends, as co-hosts say they smelled alcohol in his breath before he went on air, and claimed that he bragged about being hungover at work. And he was grilled on the affair and the sexual assault allegations during his confirmation.
Thank you, Mr. Hegseth. I'm looking forward to this opportunity to talk. I want to return to the incident that you referenced a minute ago that occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct?
I believe so.
And you had just fathered a child by a woman who would later become your third wife, correct?
Senator, I was falsely charged, fully investigated, and completely cleared.
You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared?
Okay, I want to clear a few things up because the way that they're talking about it may seem a bit unclear to some, pun intended. They are referencing two different incidents. When Pete's talking about being completely cleared, he's referring to his sexual assault allegations, which occurred in Monterey in 2017, as a woman accused him of sexual assault and said that while she did not have a complete recollection of the night in question, she remembered saying no a lot and alleged that he prevented her from leaving his hotel room. Where the DA, who let's just be abundantly clear was a female, Janine Piccone, declined to charge him because no charges were supported with proof beyond reasonable doubt. So in that sense, he was completely cleared. But he did have extramarital affairs, one whom which he had not only a child with, but ended up marrying, in which Pete's going to get grilled as you're going to see. But I really don't know what someone does in their bedroom has to do with their ability to be defense secretary. Infidelity is morally reprehensible, but tells me nothing about one's ability to do their job. Just saying.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct? And you were still married and you just had a child by another woman.
Clear.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3.
I mean, yes, he's admitted it very publicly, including on Megyn Kelly.
I think it's admitted, at least in your divorce proceedings, that you did cheat on your first 2 wives. You're on your third marriage to Jen, a former colleague of my own at Fox, and yours too. Your hookup with this woman in Monterey happened when you were with Jen. So that's 3. And there are a lot of women at home and men who will be like, it's a no. Like, how can we put a guy in this position who's a serial cheater? So is that a fair characterization of you?
I think it was a fair characterization of me before I truly was changed by Jen and my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I mean that. I mean, am I a perfect man? No. Was I a perfect man? Absolutely not. Do I regret those things? Yes. But is it who I am today? No.
But this hyper focus on it is such a pain to watch. Like, what more do you want from the guy?
I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, I'm not a perfect person, I'm not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath, like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
And also, for those who don't know, the guy who's interrogating him is Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine, who's been buddy-buddy with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton as well, who we all know that story, and really seemed to like Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris's husband, who, for a recap, has admitted to having affairs and has been accused of slapping an ex so hard she spun around. The double standards for him are undeniable, and this is why the Democratic Party has lost a lot of people, because the same nefarious behavior they accuse Republicans of, they do themselves. But that's also a point for a different time, because the next thing that Hegseth has been under scrutiny for was his tattoo that reads Deus Vult, and also his Jerusalem cross tattoo, which some say is very racist. And all these allegations were debated on Piers Morgan when liberal columnist Wajahat Ali and Democratic Party strategist Julie Roginski made some damning claims against Hegseth.
Look, I know that Republicans actually like affirmative action because they're perfectly fine with mediocre MAGA men and lowering the standards to the point where Pete Hegseth, a Fox News host, can slither under it. The Secretary of Defense, for people who don't know, the Secretary of Defense overlooks a budget of over $900 billion, 3 million people. He is responsible, in particular, for defense policymaking. We're talking about law and order, national security. You're going to give it to Pete Hegseth. His fellow colleague in the Guard looked at his tattoos and actually reporting him to be an insider threat because it was so extreme. This is a man, not just adultery, but sexual impropriety. He has been alleged of sexual impropriety and sexual assault. If he has nothing to hide, release the woman that he has signed to an NDA and paid off.
Okay, first of all, the DA dropped the charges of sexual assault once again. And also, Pete Hegseth's lawyer has already said it was only because he feared his career would suffer if the allegations were made public, claiming that Pete Hegseth was a victim of blackmail and false claims of sexual assault by an unidentified woman, which is given credence by the fact that he went through the justice system, which found no wrongdoings. Once someone is cleared, ideally it should be put behind them. Now, if he were found guilty, that would be a different story, but he wasn't. I don't understand what's so difficult to grasp.
This is a man whose own mother sent one of the most damning emails I've ever heard and read in my life. If your mother sends the email that Pete Hegseth's mother said you have failed in life, accusing him of being a sexual abuser. Pete Hegseth, as Secretary of Defense, what are we doing? You guys are putting lipsticks on a pig and you're making America less safe just because you're bending the knee to Donald Trump and he wants a lapdog.
So yes, it is true that his mother at one point wrote a damning email about him, where she called his behavior despicable and abusive towards women. However, later his mother Penelope apologized and said that it was out of emotion and anger, claiming that he's a good husband and father. Which, to be fair, someone who cheats as much as he did doesn't have a good record of being a good husband, but who knows what kind of father he is. He may be a very good one. And calling someone an abuser is a big charge, and unless there's some evidence to back that up, you can't just throw that around lightly.
Michael, where do you sit with this?
Well, so much of what Wajahat just said is not true, or as you point out, Piers, is completely unsubstantiated. You suggest that the graduate of Princeton and Harvard, who for decades has been in the U.S. military, served his country honorably, that he's somehow unqualified to work at the Pentagon. The most egregious accusation you make against him, though, is that he's an extremist because he has a tattoo. Could you tell us what the tattoo is?
The tattoos specifically, I did not make the allegation that he's an extremist. It was actually
you
his
repeated the
fellow
allegation.
colleague
So what's
who
the
called him
tattoo?
as an insider threat.
Yeah, right. So
It
what's
was
the
not
tattoo?
me.
I can tell you it says
It was his fellow
No,
colleague.
let Wajahat answer, because Wajahat, you raised that question.
Fault,
What
and
is
it
this
was his
tattoo that
colleague.
you're
I
so
mentioned the
upset about?
facts. It was his colleague. Wait. Two things.
Wajahat, hang on. Simple question. What is this tattoo that you're so upset about?
I wasn't the one upset about it. I was talking about his fellow colleague. His fellow colleague.
Do you know what it was?
In the U.S. Army, called him out as a potential insider threat.
Well, what is
looking
the
at
tattoo?
the tattoos on his chest.
What is the
And
tattoo?
also-
Okay, you can always count on Michael Knowles to call people out on their BS. And his smirk when he does it, I love it so much. Okay, I don't know if y'all saw the clip of Michael Knowles and Piers Morgan talking about the Donald Trump trial, but he was debating this leftist Francesca, and Michael and Piers asked a simple question. What exactly was the crime that Donald Trump committed? And she couldn't answer. She was deflecting or outright saying falsehoods. And similarly, they called her out on her BS, just like they're doing now.
So I called him an extremist based upon his own book. Read the book,
What
American
is the
Crusade.
tattoo? If you don't know what the tattoo is, just admit it.
Oh my Lord! Listen,
Would you
this
like
is
to
is
tell me what
awesome.
the tattoo is?
I want to
Wajahat? I'm
wait.
happy to
No,
inform
I'm
you.
genuinely intrigued. Wajahat,
Thomas
do you
to
know
my
what
right,
it is
go
or
for it.
not?
She hasn't.
Okay, this dude Wajahat is setting himself to be talked down like a baby. My God.
To my
Be honest,
right, go for
Wajahat.
it.
Do you actually know what that tattoo is or not?
Listen, what I do know is
Do
I
you?
read his book, and in his book, if
Do
you read
you
it,
know
called
or not?
American Crusade. Look,
Be honest.
I am. Look, you guys
Ironically,
are putting lipstick on a pig
no one's gonna
and
crucify
literally
you
bending
if
the
you don't
knee
know
for
the
Donald
answer.
Trump.
But
His
this is a simple
colleague.
question.
And I also said, go to his book, read his
Okay,
words.
but just to be
American
clear,
Crusade.
Wajahat, you don't
David,
know, do
Michael,
you?
why are you guys okay with
Wajahat,
that?
you don't
Where
know, do
literally
you?
in his book, American
Wajahat,
Crusade,
Wajahat,
he says he's
Wajahat, you had 98 chances to answer and you failed the test.
There you
Sorry.
go.
I'm going to
Big
Michael.
vault
I'm
tattoo.
going to
So the
Michael.
answer-
Don't
the
talk
correct
over each other. Michael.
The tattoo in question is called a Jerusalem cross. That this is a medieval Christian symbol, goes back a long time. In fact, at Jimmy Carter's funeral, there was a Jerusalem cross on the floor of the cathedral and on the program for the funeral.
Okay, he's not lying here because at Jimmy Carter's funeral, the same cross was on the cover of the pamphlet and on the floor of the cathedral where his funeral was held. So again, it begs the question, why is it okay for Democrats to have it, but a conservative, oh no, that's a Christian extremist. Give me a break.
Julie, been waiting very patiently. Your view of this. I know you said in your Substack about this, under normal circumstances, Pete Hegseth, would be precluded from serving in any leadership role. So explain why you said that.
As for the cross that you talked about, yes, Deus Vult, which is the cross that he has, and the slogan that he has,
Deus Vult is
an old
The
Christian
Jerusalem
cross. The phrase, however, was uttered by crusaders as they were slaughtering Jews and Muslims during the Second Crusade specifically. It's not true.
It is true.
The phrase was uttered after the Council of Clermont when Pope Urban II declared the crusade. And it was actually probably Dieu le Vul, but it's been rendered in Latin as Deus Vult. It has nothing to do with slaughtering Jews. It has nothing to do with slaughtering Muslims, because the Muslims had invaded Europe, not the other way around.
Okay, so this argument is incredibly nuanced in my opinion because during the Crusades, the phrase Deus Vult was coined. And yes, the Crusades did result in the slaughter of Jews and Muslims at the hands of some Christians. But at the same time, you have to think of the history behind it. Christians were also being persecuted in Jerusalem. As an example, 1099, the Fatimid governor of Jerusalem, Iftikhar al-Dawla, expelled all Christians from the city before the Crusaders arrived. But in contrast, Jewish people were allowed to stay. And also, the Seljuk Turks, a Muslim group, conquered Jerusalem in 1071 AD before the Crusaders started. Now, the Seljuk Turks were very intolerant towards Christians during that time. As an example, during their rule, it became increasingly difficult for Christians to go on pilgrimages to the Holy Land. And even worse, it felt unsafe for Christians as they feared highway robbers attacking and Christian pilgrims were even killed. And this naturally sowed some resentment, and one victim of that were the Jews as they weren't subject during that time to the same treatment. Which I'm not necessarily justifying any of it. I'm just saying that seeing it from the Christians' perspective at that time is important.
Oh my God, are you really saying that the reason the crusade, which was sent to the Holy Land to liberate the Holy Land, from whom? From Jews and Muslims?
I'll tell you why the crusade began because the Eastern Emperor asked for help from the Western Pope because the Seljuk Turks were slaughtering Christians in the Holy Land because those lands were Christian before the Muslims invaded in the 7th century.
Listen, I can go all day if you want to talk about the Crusades, but the
I gotta say, I find it was quite fascinating, actually.
What that has to do with Pete Hegseth is it's not that he has a random cross that talks about his faith in Jesus Christ. He used a very specific terminology. But putting all of that aside,
a phrase that was first uttered to defend persecuted Christians in the Middle East, just like they're being persecuted today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this point that Michael brings up is very important because it's like we're expected to see it from Palestinians' point of view. And as I brought up on this channel multiple times, people empathizing with Hamas, but no, we can't empathize with the Christians at the time.
And that's who you want as the Secretary of Defense. Wonderful.
Yes, someone who defends the persecuted.
Now, last thing I'm going to say is that people imply Hegseth is a far-right Christian nationalist, though he specifically said that he's a Christian and robustly supports the state of Israel, continuing to say that he supports killing every last member of Hamas. And you even have Ben Shapiro, who I've said sometimes grasps at straws when labeling things as anti-Semitic. He doesn't see Hegseth that way. So that proves Michael's point to a certain degree that he's defending the persecuted, which right now I feel there's unfair treatment of Jews. And so it's very telling when people are trying to smear Pete Hegseth. I mean, who knows what's going to happen throughout the next 4 years of this presidency, and which members of the cabinet will be hit with debunked or even outright false smear campaigns. But as long as you have Michael Knowles to call people out on their BS, sanity will keep making a comeback. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, hopefully I've earned a subscription. Here's some videos for you to watch in the meantime. Until next time, peace out.